So let's talk to Daryl calling in from Virginia. Daryl, what's up?
Oh, not a whole lot. How do you do?
Man, I'm just having a good old time. What's happening?
Well, I'm writing a story that involves near future sci-fi and medical tech stuff, and I've come across a lot of ethical quandaries as to how they would play out in real life. And so I'm really more asking your opinions. And I apologize if I sound religious about this topic because people have said that. But in the near future, I think we're going to see a time where medical technology will be able to fix anything beyond some catastrophic trauma. So in theory, we would, left alone, be able to live forever. How do you think that would play out in our society?
Man, I'm so glad you're asking me, Objectively Dan, medical bioethicist, about this question. Obviously, I don't have that credentials, but I mean, I've seen Black Mirror once or twice, so I guess I could answer. I mean, gosh, I think living for like if we could live forever and maybe have the choice to like turn that off, that would be cool. But if we didn't have the choice to turn that off, I don't know.
Well, in this situation, you would also be able to live in a certain like age range. You would be able to basically reverse aging and stuff. So you wouldn't get old and want to die necessarily. So, you know, whatever your favorite age was.
Stay in the range, or is it like a Benjamin Button situation?
Hey, whatever you want, man.
Okay. Well, I mean, Alphaville had that song, "Do We Really Want to Live Forever, Forever Young?" So like, I think starting with that, I would say, yeah, I would want to be young for as long as I possibly could be. Seems cool. But then we talk about like, but then if we're still birthing people and then we have more and more and more people and people aren't dying, that's a lot of people. Yeah. And people need resources. People need space. People need, and also like we play a part in the natural systems as well by our bodies decaying and stuff and doing other things with that. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I never thought about that last point.
Would this be like
exactly why
would this be like a pay to play situation,
or
like are we getting into another realm of privilege here?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Yeah.
Well, without getting into too many details that could send my personal ideas out to be stolen, as it were, this would be a situation where there is no need for anything. Everything can be provided because there was a way to transmute elements and develop energy in ways that we hadn't previously discovered before. So there would be no need for.
So what you're saying is healthcare,
universal healthcare for everyone. Right. I'm on board.
I like how we were both thinking the same thing there. That's great.
Yeah, sure.
You know, if you want a certain lifestyle, you can literally just get without having to pay anything you want for it. But do you think that people would eventually get bored, or do you think that literally nobody would? Like, do you think struggle and, you know, wanting and yearning is part of being a human, or do you think we could actually survive?
Yeah. See, if this is a future, because like this is why transhumanism is really interesting. People think it's weird, but it's interesting because part of being human is having that psychology of getting bored of stuff over time and losing interest and, you know, things that we might consider bad for us in some contexts. But if we can modify those aspects too, maybe not. If we're talking about human beings existing as they are today, but with the options you're presenting, I imagine people would get bored, or people would want to change their situation.
I think eventually they would, but the thing is, if we're talking about a world where you can essentially stop aging, and it sounds like money is no longer an issue. Like if you get bored of like living where I do in Southern Maryland, I can just move to Japan for 30 years, learn Japanese. Like why not? And then maybe go to Australia for 20 years. Like I suspect people would get bored eventually, because it does seem to be, and again, I'm not a neurologist, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but it seems to be a kind of inbuilt, innate thing. And I do wonder if if the lack of death would have like everyone would just kind of stop because there's no driving force anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing about evolution too, right? Like we're alive the way that we are because of conflict and stuff, and like the less conflict that we introduce, like I think that I don't know, like there's a part of me that like people watch like weird morbid stuff on TV and stuff, and you wonder why, and it's like I don't know, I think people are kind of drawn towards that just because of how we are evolutionarily and living in a modern society where we've taken away a lot of that conflict and stuff. I think people do seek out conflict sometimes. I don't know how healthy that is, but I do think that happens. Like people get invested in sports games and video games and stuff like that. Even though there's no, material benefit to that a lot of times. And sometimes you get like bad emotions from it, but people are still really interested in it because they like that stimulus. And I don't know.
That's an interesting question.
Do you think that I'm sorry?
It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, one last question, Daryl, and then we're going to move on.
Oh, sure. Do you think that in this latent immortality situation and people not having to face death, do you think that would motivate people to lean towards religion more or less?
Well, what would there be to be religious about if we're living in a society where I'm also presuming this is a world where most of our ills are taken care of, right? Because I imagine if you
like you wouldn't have to die. So like if you do elect to die, what's on the other side? Nobody knows, but would that lead to people being more religious since they don't have to suffer through and have this inevitable goal?
Well, I think that honestly, I do think that we will become more secularized the more that we advance as people, but I don't necessarily think that we will become less religious. So like I do think that like individual sectarian beliefs about religion will happen as a natural consequence of people. I think like I think the religions that we see today and people who even call themselves non-religious, sometimes they just like interpret old religious ideals in new ways, and so they don't even consider themselves religious, even though they don't realize the ideas that they think about are religious ones. I don't know, but it's complicated because history could turn differently in the future too. Maybe this is just a result of a temporary blip. I do think that people are broadly more secular when you close material gaps, though. I think like that can be demonstrated through data. So I and that side of me says that they would be less religious. But like we're also seeing crazy stuff that people are believing now that I would never assume people would believe. And we live in a world where we got the internet and stuff. Yeah, QAnon is still a thing, and that's become a religious movement, and then all kinds of other stuff. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of I don't knows, Daryl. I don't know if they're super helpful, but it's an interesting question to think about.
A couple pretty good points.
Cool.
Yeah, you give me a pretty good. A couple good points to think about, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, cool. Hey, give us some. You have to give me and Megan credit in your book now.
Absolutely.
So that's how that works.
Okay.
So,
well, would I be able to like email you about a more specific thing?
The email for the show is truth@atheist-community.org, and that's for anybody who has any inquiries related to the show. So that is open for people. So there you go, Daryl. Hopefully we were good answerers to your questions. I don't know that we were, but I'm glad he got something out of it. So
I'm bad at thought experiments like that because my response is, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's better to not know and then to be like really sure about something and be really wrong. Right.
That's
like, that's how a lot of bad policies are made. So anyway, thankfully I'm not in charge of that department of human health. So no skin off my back.